Ethan Caldwell sat alone in his corner office on the 43rd floor, staring out at the city lights blinking below like distant stars. It was past 9 at night and the building was quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning and the occasional ping of an elevator somewhere far away. His desk was spotless, no papers, no coffee mugs, just a sleek laptop and a single-framed photo turned face down. He hadn't looked at it in months. He was 38, the CEO of a tech company that most people had heard of but few truly understood. To the outside world, he had it all. A penthouse with floor-to-ceiling windows, a garage full of cars he barely drove, and a bank account that reset people's jaws. But inside, he felt hollow. Success, it turned out, didn't come with built-in company. His assistant, a sharp woman in her 50s who'd worked with him since the startup days, had been gently nudging him for weeks. "You're not a robot, you know," she'd said just that morning, handing him his usual black coffee. "Even robots need maintenance. You need connection." He'd rolled his eyes, but deep down he knew she was right. His last real relationship had ended 5 years ago, amicably but completely. Since then, he'd buried himself in work, in meetings, in quarterly reports. He hadn't been on a date in over 3 years. The idea of swiping through apps made him tired. Everyone seemed to be selling a version of themselves, polished and filtered. He missed real talk, real eyes, real silence that didn't feel heavy. That's why, when his assistant mentioned a high-end matchmaking service she'd heard about, discreet, thorough, and supposedly excellent at pairing people based on values, not just photos, he surprised himself by saying yes. "They vet everyone," she'd explained. "No influencers, no gold diggers. Just thoughtful, accomplished people looking for something genuine." He'd nodded, half listening, already mentally drafting an email in his head, but he gave her the go-ahead. A week later, an email arrived. Subject, "Your match, Isabella Moretti." He opened it with mild curiosity. The profile photo took his breath away. She was tall, with sharp cheekbones, deep brown eyes, and hair that looked like it belonged in a fashion magazine. Long, glossy, and perfectly tousled. Her bio said she was a model who'd worked in Milan and New York, but had recently returned home to focus on photography and meaningful human moments. She loved jazz, old bookstores, and cooking pasta from scratch. Ethan didn't usually go for models, they felt like another kind of performance. But something about her words felt softer than expected. Maybe it was the part where she wrote, "I'm tired of being looked at. I want to be seen." He agreed to the date. The matchmaker suggested a quiet bistro downtown, elegant but not flashy, with candlelight and linen napkins. Ethan arrived early, as he always did. He wore a navy suit, not too stiff, with a white shirt and no tie. He ordered a glass of mineral water and waited, watching couples come and go. Some laughed loudly, others sat in silence, scrolling on their phones. He wondered if he'd end up like that. 2 people sharing a table, but not a moment. At exactly 7:30 p.m., the hostess led a woman to his table, but it wasn't her. This woman was shorter, with tired eyes and a faded denim jacket over a simple blouse. Her dark hair was pulled back in a loose ponytail, and she clutched a worn canvas tote bag like a shield. She looked around nervously, then stepped forward. Are you Ethan?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. He blinked. "Yes, and you're Isabella?" She flushed instantly. "Oh, no, I'm not. I'm so sorry. My name is Maya. I think there's been a mistake," he frowned. "A mistake?" She nodded quickly, glancing toward the door like she wanted to bolt. "I got a text from the Harmony Match service saying my blind date was here at this table, but I know I wasn't supposed to be matched with anyone this week. I've been saving up just to keep my profile active, but I didn't think—" She stopped herself, embarrassed. "Look, I'll go. I must have mixed up the details. I'm really sorry to bother you." She turned to leave, but something in her voice, the honesty, the lack of pretense, made him speak before he could stop himself. "Wait." She paused, one hand on the back of a chair. "Sit down," he said, more gently this time. "At least let me buy you a drink while we figure this out." She hesitated, then slowly sat. "I shouldn't. I have to pick up my daughter in an hour. My neighbor's watching her, and she gets fussy if I'm late." "Then coffee," he offered. "Or tea. Whatever you like." She gave a small, grateful smile. "Coffee would be nice. Black, please." He signaled the waiter, ordered 2 coffees, and then leaned forward slightly. "So, how did this happen?" Maya sighed, rubbing her temple. "Honestly, I think it's their system glitch. I signed up months ago just to trial really, but I couldn't afford the full membership. I kept my profile up because, well, I thought maybe someday, but I never expected to actually get a match, especially not tonight. I was at work, waiting tables at the diner on 5th, when the notification popped up. I almost ignored it, but she trailed off, then added quietly, "I've been lonely too." The words hung in the air, simple and raw. Ethan felt something shift inside him. This wasn't the polished model from the photo. This was a woman who worked double shifts, worried about her kid, and still showed up, even when she thought it might be a mistake. "I'm sorry about the mix-up," he said. "But I'm glad you came." She looked surprised. "You are?" "Yeah," he said and meant it. "Most people would have just left. But you stayed to explain. That says something." She smiled again, a little more relaxed this time. "Well, I figured if I was going to embarrass myself, I might as well do it properly." The coffees arrived. She wrapped her hands around the warm mug like it was a lifeline. "So," he said, "tell me about your daughter." Her face lit up instantly. "Lily, she's 6. Smart as a whip, stubborn as a mule, and she draws the most amazing pictures. Right now, she's obsessed with space, wants to be an astronaut or a baker. Says she'll bake cakes for aliens." He laughed, really laughed. For the first time in weeks, they talked. Not about careers or net worth or Instagram followers, but about bedtime routines, burnt toast, the way rain sounds different in the city versus the countryside. She'd grown up in a small town. He'd never left the city. She told him about studying for her nursing certification between shifts, how she listened to anatomy lectures on her headphones while washing dishes. He told her about losing his parents young, how the company became his only family, how sometimes he walked through his empty apartment and felt like a ghost in his own life. The hour passed too quickly. When her phone buzzed with a reminder, "Pick up Lily in 15 mins," she stood abruptly. "I have to go. Thank you for the coffee and for not making me feel like an idiot." "You're not an idiot," he said, standing too. "You're one of the most real people I've met in years." She looked at him, really looked at him, and for a second neither of them moved. Then she nodded. "Well, thanks again." He walked her out. Outside, the night air was cool. She pulled her jacket tighter. "Can I give you a ride?" he asked. "Where do you live?" She hesitated. "It's not far, just a few blocks over, but I don't want to trouble you." "It's no trouble." She studied his face as if trying to decide if he was sincere. Finally, she nodded. His black sedan was parked at the curb. The driver stepped out to open the door, but Ethan waved him off and opened it himself. As they drove through the quiet streets, she gave directions in a calm voice. When they pulled up to a modest apartment building with peeling paint and a flickering porch light, she turned to him. "This is me." "Thanks for the company," he said. "Thanks for not kicking me out when I showed up at the wrong table." He smiled. "Best mistake I've had in a long time." She got out, then paused. "You know, if the matchmaker calls you about Isabella, tell them to check their files. Someone's going to be very confused when she shows up next week." "I'll do that," he said. She gave a little wave and walked toward the building. At the door, she turned and looked back. He saw her glance up at his car, then quickly look away, as if reminding herself of the distance between their worlds. He watched until she disappeared inside. Back in the car, he didn't head straight home. He told the driver to circle the block once. He wasn't ready to go back to the silence yet. For the first time in years, he didn't feel alone in his thoughts. He felt curious, hopeful even. And as the city lights blurred past the window, he found himself wondering what Lily's latest space drawing looked like, and whether Maya took sugar in her coffee, or if she always drank it black like life had taught her to. He couldn't stop thinking about her, not in a dramatic, movie kind of way, but in the quiet, persistent way that real thoughts work. While signing contracts the next morning, he caught himself wondering if she'd made it home okay. During a strategy meeting about cloud infrastructure, his mind drifted to the way she'd smiled when talking about her daughter's alien baking dreams. Even his coffee tasted different, less bitter somehow, because he kept remembering how she'd held her mug like it was the only warm thing in her day. He told himself it was just curiosity. A strange night, a mix-up, a nice conversation, nothing more. But by Thursday, he was standing outside the diner on 5th Street, hands in his coat pockets, feeling oddly nervous. It was just after 2 p.m., between lunch and dinner rush. Through the fogged-up window, he saw her. She was wiping down a booth, her hair tied back, sleeves rolled up. She looked tired but focused, moving with the kind of efficiency that came from doing too much for too long. He almost turned around. What was he doing here? He didn't belong in a place like this. Linoleum floors, neon open sign buzzing, the smell of grease and coffee thick in the air. He was supposed to be finalizing a merger, not lurking outside a diner like some lovesick teenager. But then she looked up. Their eyes met through the glass. She froze for a second, then gave a small, surprised wave. He raised a hand back. A moment later, she pushed the door open, wiping her hands on her apron. "Hey," she said, voice warm but cautious. "You lost?" "No," he said, smiling a little, "just passing by." She raised an eyebrow. "On 5th Street? In a $3,000 coat?" He glanced down at his overcoat, cashmere, Italian, definitely out of place, and laughed. "Okay, fair. I wanted to see if you were okay. After the other night?" "I'm fine," she said, but her eyes softened. "Thanks for asking." There was a pause. A truck rumbled past. Somewhere inside the diner, a coffee machine hissed. "You want to come in?" she asked finally. "I've got a 10-minute break coming up." "And the pie's actually decent," he nodded. "I'd like that." Inside, the diner was cozy in a worn-out kind of way. Red vinyl booths, a jukebox in the corner playing soft oldies, photos of regulars taped to the wall. She led him to a corner booth away from the kitchen. "Coffee?" she asked. "Sure." She came back with 2 mugs and a slice of apple pie on a chipped plate. "On the house," she said, sitting across from him. "For not calling the cops when I showed up at your fancy date." He chuckled. "I think I owe you more than pie for that." She stirred her coffee slowly. "So, did the real Isabella ever show up?" "No," he said. "I called the matchmaker the next day. Turns out there was a system error. Your profile got linked to my account by accident." They were mortified. "Offered me a full refund and a free year of service. And?" she asked, watching him. "And I told them I wasn't interested." He met her gaze. "Because the person I met was better than the one I was supposed to." She looked down, a faint blush creeping up her neck. "Don't say things like that." "Why not?" "It's true," she sighed, wrapping her hands around her mug again. "Because it's not that simple. You and we live in different worlds. You probably have a driver, a personal chef, a closet full of shoes that cost more than my car. I count pennies to buy milk. I can't even afford new sneakers for my kid without planning for it 2 months ahead. I'm not asking you to move into my penthouse," he said gently. "I'm just asking if we can talk. As people." She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "You really don't get it, do you?" "Get what?" "That people like me don't get second chances with people like you. If I let myself believe this, whatever this is, could be real and then it falls apart. It's not just a broken heart. It's my whole life that gets shaken. Lily depends on me. I can't afford hope that doesn't pay the bills." Her words hit him harder than he expected. He'd never thought about it that way. To him, a failed date was a minor inconvenience. To her, it could feel like another door slamming shut in a hallway already full of them. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I didn't mean to make you feel pressured." She nodded, her shoulders relaxing a little. "I know, and I appreciate that you came here. Really. Most guys in your position would have blocked my number and moved on." "I don't have your number," he said. She blinked. "Oh," he pulled out his phone. "Would you maybe want to share it?" She hesitated, then took the phone and typed it in slowly, like she was weighing each digit. When she handed it back, their fingers brushed just for a second, but it sent a quiet jolt through both of them. "Don't call me at 3 a.m. unless the world's ending," she said. Half joking, "I'll text first," he promised. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, eating pie. It was surprisingly good. Flaky crust, tart apples, just the right amount of cinnamon. "You know," he said, "I haven't had pie in a diner since I was a kid." "Yeah? What happened?" "My parents died when I was 16. After that, it was boarding school, then college, then work. Never really had time for normal things." She looked at him differently then, not with pity, but with understanding. "Normal's overrated anyway. But sometimes it's nice to pretend," he smiled. "Like alien baking astronauts." She laughed, and the sound was light, easy, like she'd forgotten how to do it for a while. When her break ended, she stood up reluctantly. "I've got to get back." Of course, he stood too. Thank you for the pie. And the honesty, she nodded. Be careful driving back to your castle. It's just an apartment, he said. With a view that costs more than my lifetime rent, she teased gently. He walked out. But before he got to the curb, she called after him. Hey, he turned. If you ever want more pie, you know where to find me. He grinned. I'll be back. And he meant it. That night, instead of working late, he sat on his balcony with a cup of tea. No whiskey, no reports, just watching the city breathe. He thought about her words. I can't afford hope that doesn't pay the bills. It stayed with him. He'd spent his whole life believing money solved everything, but maybe what she needed wasn't money. Maybe it was something rarer, someone who saw her, not her struggles, not her job, not her bank account, but her. Over the next week, they texted. Short messages at first. How was your day? Lily drew you a picture, says you look like a friendly robot. Did you pass your quiz? Barely. But I'll take it. He didn't ask her out again right away. He let it unfold slowly, like she needed space to trust that he wasn't going anywhere. Then, on a Saturday morning, he showed up at the public library. He'd seen her profile mentioned she studied there on weekends, when her neighbor watched Lily. He didn't go inside, just waited on a bench, across the street with 2 paper cups of coffee and a bag from the bakery down the block. When she came out an hour later, books tucked under her arm, she spotted him immediately. This time she didn't look surprised. She looked relieved. You're becoming a habit, she said, walking over. One you can't quit? He asked, handing her a coffee. She took it, smiling. Only if the coffee's good. They walked through the park nearby, talking about everything and nothing. She told him about her nursing class, how she struggled with anatomy but loved patient care. He told her about a new project at work that actually excited him, a program to bring free tech training to underserved communities. You're doing that? She asked, genuinely impressed. I'm trying to, he said. It's slow, but yeah. She looked at him like she was seeing him for the first time. Not as a CEO, but as a person trying to do something good. Later, they sat on a bench under a big oak tree. Lily's drawing was tucked in her bag, a crayon sketch of a man with kind eyes and a robot body, holding hands with a little girl and a woman with a stethoscope. She thinks you're part robot because you fix things with your brain, Maya explained. Laughing, I'll take it, he said. As the sun dipped lower, casting long shadows, he asked, Can I walk you home? She nodded. This time, when they reached her building, he didn't just drop her off. He walked her to the door. She fumbled with her keys, then turned to him. Thanks for today. Thank you, he said, for letting me be part of it. She hesitated, then said softly, You know, Lily asked about you. She wants to know if you like pancakes. I love pancakes, he said. Maybe, sometime, you could come over for breakfast? Just pancakes, no expectations. His heart did a quiet flip. I'd like that. She smiled, a real full smile this time, and opened the door. Before she stepped inside, she turned back. Don't be late. I won't. He watched her go in, then stood there for a full minute, breathing in the cool evening air. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like he was waiting for something to happen. He felt like he was already in it, and it was messy, uncertain, and absolutely real. He got into his car, but instead of heading home, he drove to a toy store. Not for anything fancy, just a small coloring book and a box of crayons. On the way back, he stopped at a grocery store and bought pancake mix, real maple syrup, and a carton of milk. He didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but for tonight he knew one thing. He was going to show up, not as a CEO, not as a solution, but as a man who cared, and maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The pancakes were a disaster. Not because they tasted bad, they were actually pretty good, but because he'd never made them before. And he spilled batter on the floor, burned the first batch, and nearly set off the smoke alarm. Lily, barefoot in pajamas with her hair in messy pigtails, stood on a stool beside him, giggling as he fumbled with the spatula. You're supposed to flip it like this, she said, demonstrating with an imaginary pancake in the air. I'm trying, he said, laughing, but your mom didn't warn me how hard this job is. From the kitchen doorway, she watched them, arms crossed but smiling. She'd woken up to the smell of coffee and the sound of clumsy clattering, and for a moment she'd just stood there, heart in her throat, watching a man who owned half the skyline try to cook breakfast in her tiny kitchen like it was the most important thing in the world. It felt normal, too normal, and that scared her a little. After breakfast, during which Lily declared him the best pancake robot ever, he helped clean up without being asked. He washed dishes while Lily drew at the table, humming a song from school. She stood by the sink drying a plate and said quietly, "You didn't have to come." "I wanted to," he said, not looking up. "But why? You could be anywhere right now. On a yacht. At some fancy conference, not here scrubbing my greasy pans." He turned off the water and faced her. "Because this feels real. And I'm tired of pretending everything else is enough." She didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded and handed him a towel. Over the next few weeks, they fell into a rhythm. He'd stop by after work, sometimes with groceries, sometimes with nothing but time. He'd help Lily with her homework, even though he barely remembered third-grade math, read her bedtime stories in a silly voice, and once even helped fix the leaky faucet in the bathroom with a YouTube tutorial in sheer determination. She started letting her guard down. She laughed more. She let him see her tired, her frustrated, her overwhelmed, and he never tried to fix it. He just sat with her in it. One rainy Tuesday, she came home from her evening shift soaked to the bone, her shoes squelching, her hair plastered to her face. She'd missed the bus, walked 20 blocks, and found out her certification exam had been moved up. She now had only 10 days to study for a test she wasn't ready for. She sat on the couch, too exhausted to cry, just staring at the wall. He was there within 20 minutes. Not because she called, she hadn't, but because he'd texted to say goodnight and she hadn't replied. He found her curled up under a thin blanket, shivering. Without a word, he made her tea, turned up the heat and wrapped her in a dry sweater he'd brought from his car. Then he sat beside her and said, "Tell me what you need." She shook her head. "Nothing. I just need to sleep." "You've got the exam in 10 days, he said gently. "You can't study if you're drowning." "I know," she whispered. "But I can't afford a tutor. And I work every night. I don't have time." He was quiet for a moment. "Then, what if I helped?" She looked at him. "You? You don't know nursing." "No," he admitted. "But I know how to learn fast. And I've got time. Let me be your study partner. I'll quiz you. Make flashcards. Whatever you need." She wanted to say no. Pride flared up. She didn't want his charity, his pity, his easy solutions. But then she thought of Lily, of the future she was fighting for, and she nodded slowly. "Okay, but no fancy stuff. Just you and me. Like this." "Like this," he agreed. For the next week, they studied every night after Lily went to bed. He'd bring takeout, she'd make tea, and they'd spread books and notes across the kitchen table. He asked questions, took notes, even made silly mnemonics to help her remember. Never let monkeys eat bananas, that's for the cranial nerves, right? She was surprised by how patient he was, how focused, how he'd stay until midnight, even when she was frustrated and snapping at him. On the night before the exam, she couldn't sleep. She paced the living room, muttering terms under her breath. He found her at 2 a.m., sitting on the floor with her head in her hands. "I'm going to fail," she said, voice cracking. "No, you're not," he said, sitting beside her. "You've worked harder than anyone I know. You've done double shifts, raised a kid alone, and still showed up for this. That's not failure. That's courage." She looked at him, eyes wet. "What if it's not enough?" "It is," he said firmly. "And even if it's not this time, you'll try again. And I'll be right here." She leaned her head on his shoulder, just for a moment. Just long enough to feel like she wasn't alone. The next morning, he drove her to the testing center. She walked in with shaky hands but a steady heart. When she came out 3 hours later, she was pale but smiling. "I think I passed," she said, voice trembling. "I'm not sure, but I think I did." He hugged her right there on the sidewalk, and for the first time, she didn't pull away. 2 days later, the results came in. She'd passed. Not just passed, she'd scored in the top 10%. She called him sobbing. He showed up with ice cream, balloons, and a handmade future nurse banner that Lily had decorated with glitter and stars. They celebrated with pizza on the floor, music playing from an old speaker, Lily dancing in her socks. For a few hours, everything felt light. But life doesn't stay light for long. A week later, a tabloid website ran a story. "Billionaire CEO ditches elite match for diner waitress. Is this love or a PR stunt? It included grainy photos of him walking her home, sitting in the diner, even one of him carrying groceries up her apartment stairs. The caption read, "Sources say he's using her for a humble image boost ahead of his company's IPO." She saw it on her phone during her lunch break and felt sick. That night, when he came by, she was quiet, distant. "What's wrong?" he asked. She showed him the article. He read it, his face hardening. "This is garbage." "Maybe," she said, "but people believe it. My coworkers are whispering. My neighbor asked if you're paying my rent. Lily's teacher even made a comment about celebrity parents." He stood up, pacing. "I'll sue them." No," she said sharply. "Don't, that'll just make it worse. They'll say you're silencing me." He stopped, running a hand through his hair. "Then what do we do?" She looked at him, really looked at him, and said the hardest thing she'd ever said. "Maybe we should stop." He froze. "What?" "Not because I don't care," she said quickly, tears welling up. "But because this spotlight hurts. And it's not fair to Lily. She doesn't understand why strangers are talking about her mom like she's a joke. And I can't protect her from that if we keep doing this." He sat down slowly, like the air had been knocked out of him. "So that's it? You're walking away because of some gossip site?" "It's not just the site," she whispered. "It's the world we live in. You move in circles where people have lawyers and PR teams. I move in circles where one bad rumor can cost me my job, my apartment, my dignity. I can't risk that. Not for me. Not for her." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, voice low, "Do you think I'm using you?" She shook her head fiercely. "No, I know you're not. But the world doesn't know that. And I can't make them understand." He stood up, walked to the window, and stared out at the streetlights. "I didn't fall for you because you're a diner waitress. I fell for you because you're the first person in years who looked me in the eye and told the truth, even when it hurt. Because you fight for your kid like a warrior. Because you study until 2 a.m. and still show up with kindness the next day." He turned to her. "If you walk away because you're scared, I'll understand. But don't walk away because you think I don't mean it. Because I do." More than anything, she didn't answer. She just hugged herself, tears falling silently. He left that night without saying goodbye. For 3 days they didn't talk. She missed him more than she thought possible. Missed his calm presence, his terrible pancake flips, the way he'd listen like every word mattered. He missed her too. But worse, he missed the feeling of being needed, not just admired. On the 4th day, he did something he'd never done before. He wrote a public post, not through his company, not through a PR team, but on his personal social media, which he rarely used. It was short, just a few lines. "A few weeks ago, I met someone who reminded me what really matters. She's not famous. She doesn't wear designer clothes or attend galas. She works 2 jobs, studies late into the night, and raises her daughter with more love and strength than I've ever seen. Some people are calling it a stunt. It's not. It's the realest thing that's happened to me in years. And if loving her makes me look humble, then fine. But don't mistake humility for weakness, hers or mine. To the woman who thinks she's not enough, you are. You always were." He didn't tag her. He didn't use her name. But she knew, and so did everyone else. The post went viral. Some people mocked it. Others called it sweet. A few news outlets even ran respectful follow-ups. But the most important reaction came that evening. There was a knock on his penthouse door. He opened it. She stood there, eyes red but determined, Lily asleep in her arms, wrapped in a blanket. "I read your post," she said. "I meant every word," he said. She stepped inside, shifting Lily gently. "She wanted to see you. Said she dreamed you were sad." He looked at the little girl in her arms, peaceful, trusting, and then at her. "I am sad," he said. "When you're not here." She took a deep breath. "I'm scared, but I'm more scared of regret. Of looking back and wondering what could have been if I'd just believed in us." He reached out slowly and took her hand. "Then let's find out." She nodded, and just like that, the wall between them didn't vanish, but it cracked enough to let the light through. They didn't have answers. They didn't have a perfect plan. But they had this: 2 people choosing each other, not in spite of their differences, but because of what those differences taught them. As he helped her lay Lily down on the couch with a pillow and a stuffed bear, she whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." He brushed a strand of hair from her face. Never. Outside, the city buzzed on, full of noise and judgment and chaos. But in that quiet room there was only warmth, trust, and the soft sound of a child breathing peacefully. Finally safe in a world that was starting to feel a little kinder. It started with a cough. Just a little one, soft, almost cute, during story time. Lily sat curled up on the couch, wrapped in her favorite blanket with the stars listening as he read about a brave mouse who sailed across a bathtub ocean. Halfway through she coughed, then rubbed her eyes and yawned. "She's probably just tired," she said, tucking the blanket tighter around her daughter's shoulders. But the next morning, Lily's forehead was warm. By afternoon she was burning up. She called the clinic where she now worked part-time, as a nursing assistant thanks to her new license, and got an appointment for that evening. He came straight from a board meeting, still in his suit, tie loosened, carrying juice boxes and children's fever medicine, like he'd memorized the aisle layout at the pharmacy. At the clinic, the doctor listened to Lily's chest and frowned. "Her lungs sound tight. We need to get her to the children's hospital for a chest x-ray." The words hit like ice water. They rushed across town in his car, Lily limp in her arms, breathing fast and shallow. In the ER, nurses moved quickly, hooking her up to monitors, drawing blood, asking questions in calm, practiced voices. She held Lily's hand the whole time, whispering, "You're okay, baby. Mama's right here." He stood back, not wanting to crowd them, but never took his eyes off them. He made calls, quietly, efficiently, using connections he rarely tapped. Within an hour, a senior pediatric specialist was walking through the ER doors, not because of money, but because he'd once helped fund the hospital's new wing, and they owed him a quiet favor. The diagnosis came fast: severe pneumonia. They needed to admit her immediately. She sat in the hospital chair, numb, watching nurses start an IV in her daughter's tiny arm. Her hands shook. She hadn't eaten all day. Her shift at the clinic had been canceled, which meant no pay. The hospital copay alone would wipe out her savings. He saw it all, the panic behind her eyes, the way she kept checking her phone for messages from her neighbor about picking up Lily's stuffed animals, the way she bit her lip to keep from crying. Without a word, he stepped out into the hallway and called his assistant. "Clear my schedule for the next week, no exceptions." Then he called his driver. "Bring a change of clothes for me and a big tote bag. Fill it with kids' books, soft pajamas, coloring supplies, and that strawberry shampoo Lily likes." When he came back, she was trying to fill out insurance forms with trembling hands. "Let me," he said gently, taking the clipboard. "I can't ask you to do this," she whispered. "You're not asking," he said. "I'm offering. And I'm not leaving." He didn't just stay. He showed up. While she dozed in the stiff hospital chair, he sat on the floor beside Lily's bed, reading aloud from a book about space bakers. When Lily woke up scared in the middle of the night, he was the one who held her hand until she fell back asleep, humming a tune he barely remembered from his own childhood. He brought her coffee in the mornings, black, just how she liked it, and made sure she ate even when she said she wasn't hungry. He handled calls from the insurance company, filled out paperwork, and even charmed the night nurse into bringing an extra pillow. One evening, as Lily slept, she finally broke. "I can't do this alone," she admitted, tears spilling over. "I thought I could. I've done everything alone for so long. But this is too much." He sat beside her, not too close, not too far. "You're not alone anymore. But what if I lose her?" Her voice cracked. "What if I can't protect her?" "You already have," he said softly. "Every single day. You've given her love, safety, courage. That doesn't disappear because she's sick." She leaned into him then, just her shoulder touching his, and let herself cry quietly, without shame. The next morning, Lily's fever broke. Her breathing eased. The doctor said she could go home in 2 days. Relief washed over her like a wave. But it was short-lived. That afternoon, her phone buzzed with a notification. A local gossip blog had posted a new story. "Billionaire's secret sick child. Is the diner mom hiding a scandal?" The article twisted the truth, claiming Lily was his secret daughter, that she'd trapped him, that the hospital stay was a cover-up. It included a blurry photo of him carrying Lily's overnight bag, captioned, "Daddy issues or PR crisis." Her stomach dropped. She showed him the article, hands shaking. He read it, jaw tight. "This is disgusting." "It's everywhere," she said, voice hollow. "My coworkers are texting me. My neighbor won't look me in the eye. Someone even left a note on my door saying I'm using tragedy for attention." He stood up, furious. "I'll shut them down, No," she said, firmer this time. "Every time you fight them, it gets worse. They feed on drama. And now they've dragged Lily into it. She's 6 years old. She doesn't deserve this." He sat back down, running his hands over his face. "Then what do we do?" She looked at him, exhausted, but clear-eyed. Maybe we should stop. For real this time." He stared at her. "Because of a stupid blog?" "Because of what it's doing to her," she said, nodding toward Lily's sleeping form. "She woke up this morning asking if she did something bad because people are mad at us." How do I explain that to a child? How do I protect her from a world that sees us as a story, not people? He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "So you'd rather walk away than let me stand by you?" "I'd rather walk away than let her get hurt," she said, tears welling again. "You don't understand what it's like to be judged for every choice you make, to have your love questioned because of your bank account, or lack of one." "I'm trying to understand," he said quietly. "But you keep pushing me out when I'm trying to come in." She looked away. "Maybe it's easier if we just go back to our own worlds." He didn't argue, didn't beg. He just stood, walked to the window, and watched the city below. Then he turned back to her. Okay, she asked, stunned. "If that's what you need to feel safe for her, then okay, but know this. I'm not disappearing, not really, I'll still be here. Not as your boyfriend, not as a headline. Just as someone who cares. If you ever need me, for Lily, for you, I'll come. No questions, no expectations." She didn't know what to say. He left that night after Lily fell asleep, kissing her forehead gently before going. For 2 days, he didn't come by. She told herself it was for the best, but the hospital room felt colder without him. Lily asked for him twice. On the third day, as they packed to go home, her phone rang. It was the pediatric specialist. "Good news," the doctor said. "We've secured Lily a follow-up appointment with the top respiratory therapist in the city. Next week, no wait list." She blinked. "But the wait is usually months." "There was a cancellation," the doctor said, then added gently, "Let's just say someone made a very persuasive case for urgency." She knew who. When they got home, the apartment was spotless. Groceries filled the fridge. Juice, soup, fresh fruit. A new humidifier sat on the nightstand. And on Lily's bed was a handmade card. "Get well soon, Space Baker. Your robot friend." She sat on the edge of the bed and cried, not from sadness, but from the weight of being seen, cared for, protected without being asked. That evening, there was a knock. She opened the door. He stood there holding a paper bag of takeout and a small potted plant. "Peace offering," he said, "and the plant's for Lily. It's a moonflower. Supposedly blooms at night like stars." She stepped aside without a word. He came in, set the food on the table, and sat at the kitchen chair like he belonged there. Lily, wrapped in a blanket, peeked out from her room. "You came back." "Of course I did," he said, smiling. "Who else is going to test your alien cake recipes?" She ran to him and he hugged her gently, careful of her still healing chest. Later, after Lily was asleep, they sat on the couch, mugs of tea in hand. "I'm sorry," she said softly, "for pushing you away." "You were protecting her," he said. "I get it now. I didn't before, but I do." She looked at him. "Do you think it'll ever stop? The noise, the judgment?" He thought for a moment. "Maybe not completely, but we don't have to live in their story. We can write our own." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "What does our story look like?" Messy, he said. Real. Full of hospital visits and burnt pancakes and people who don't understand. But also, full of this. He gestured to the quiet apartment, the soft nightlight glowing under Lily's door, the moonflower on the windowsill beginning to unfurl its first bud. She smiled. Yeah, that sounds like enough. Outside, the world kept spinning, cruel, curious, loud, but inside, there was only peace, and for the first time she believed they could keep it. Life didn't change overnight, but it changed steadily, like the slow, sure growth of a plant reaching for the sun. 6 months after Lily's illness, she was back to her full, bright self, running, laughing, drawing pictures of robots and astronauts holding hands under rainbow skies. She'd even started a space bakery club at school, where kids designed cakes for imaginary planets. Her teacher said she was the most imaginative child in the class. Her mother had finished her nursing program and now worked full-time at the community clinic, not in the back office, but in patient care where she belonged. She still wore her hair in a practical ponytail, still packed her lunch in the same worn tote, but there was a new lightness in her step. She slept through the night more often. She smiled without thinking about it first. And him? He was different too. He hadn't quit his company. He still showed up for big decisions, but he'd handed day-to-day leadership to a trusted team. He spent his mornings in meetings, yes, but his afternoons, those were his own. Some days, he'd be at the public library, helping Lily with a science project about the solar system. Other days, he'd be in the kitchen of their little house on the quieter side of town, attempting and often failing to follow a recipe from a crumpled index card labeled Maya's famous chili. They didn't move into his penthouse. They found a modest 2-bedroom with a small backyard, peeling paint, and a porch swing that squeaked when you rocked too hard. It wasn't fancy, but it had room for Lily's drawings on the fridge, for muddy shoes by the door, for Sunday pancakes that were still slightly lopsided but always made with love. People still talked, of course. The tabloids tried once or twice to revive the billionaire and the waitress angle, but the story had lost its spark. There was no scandal, no drama, just two people building something quiet and real. And real life, it turned out, wasn't very good for clickbait. One rainy Saturday, as they sat on the couch with mugs of hot chocolate, Lily curled between them watching cartoons, he said. I've been thinking, she raised an eyebrow. That's dangerous, he smiled. I want to make it official. She froze, mug halfway to her lips. Official? Not just living together, he said gently. Married. If you'll have me. She set her mug down slowly. You know what people will say. They'll say I trapped you, that I wanted your money. I don't care what they say, he said. I care what you feel. She looked at him, really looked, and saw no pressure, no expectation. Just love, steady and sure. I don't need a ring to know you're mine, she said softly. But I'd like to say it out loud, in front of people who matter. Then we will, he said. They didn't plan a big wedding. No ballroom, no designer dress, no guest list full of strangers. Just 20 people who'd walked with them through the hard parts. Her best friend from the diner, his longtime assistant, Lily's favorite teacher, a few co-workers from the clinic, and the neighbor who'd watched Lily during night shifts for years. The ceremony was held in the backyard, under a canopy of string lights and blooming jasmine. Lily was the flower girl, wearing a simple yellow dress and carrying a basket of daisies. She dropped most of them on the way down the aisle, a path of old bricks. But no one minded. Her dress was second-hand, ivory, simple, with tiny lace sleeves. She'd bought it with her own savings, and when she walked toward him barefoot on the grass, he thought he'd never seen anyone so beautiful. The officiant, a retired nurse from the clinic who'd delivered 3 of her patients' babies, spoke about love not as grand gestures, but as daily choices, showing up, listening, staying when it's hard. When it was his turn to speak, he didn't read from a card. He just looked at her and said, I thought I was meeting a model that night. Someone polished, perfect, easy. But life gave me something better. It gave me you, tired, real, fighting for your kid with everything you had. You didn't just melt my heart. You rebuilt it. And I promise to spend every day after this earning the trust you've already given me. She cried. So did half the guests. After the vows, they shared a slice of cake, chocolate with raspberry filling baked by Lily and her Space Bakery Club with adult supervision. Music played from a small speaker, and people danced on the damp grass, laughing as raindrops mixed with the string lights. Later, as the guests drifted home and Lily fell asleep on a blanket under the stars, they sat on the porch swing, hands clasped. "You know," she said, leaning her head on his shoulder. "I used to think love was something that happened to other people. People with perfect lives, perfect timing. And now?" he asked. "Now I know love is what you build when you're both a little broken. But you choose to hold each other up anyway." He kissed the top of her head. "Best mistake I ever made." She laughed softly. "It wasn't a mistake. No," he agreed. "It was the best thing that ever happened to me." Life went on. He still wore suits sometimes for board meetings, charity galas, the occasional interview. But more often he was in jeans and a sweater, helping Lily build a cardboard rocket ship in the living room, or walking the dog they'd adopted from the shelter, a scrappy terrier mix they named Comet. She still worked long hours, but now she came home to someone who asked how her day was and really listened. Someone who made dinner when she was on late shift, who remembered Lily's dentist appointments, who held her when the weight of the world felt heavy. They weren't perfect. They argued about chores, forgot to pay the water bill once, and still burned toast more often than not. But they always came back to each other, always. One evening, as they sat on the back steps watching fireflies blink in the dusk, Lily ran out with a drawing. "Look," she said, thrusting it into his hands. It showed 3 stick figures under a big yellow sun. One had a stethoscope, one had a robot arm, and one had wings. Above them, in wobbly letters, it read, "My family. We fix hearts." He looked at it, then at her, eyes shining. "This is the best picture I've ever seen." Lily beamed. "I'm going to be a heart doctor when I grow up, so I can fix real hearts, not just robot ones." "You'll be amazing," her mother said, pulling her close. Later, after Lily was in bed and the house was quiet except for the hum of the refrigerator and Comet snoring on the rug, he stood in the kitchen washing dishes. She came up behind him, wrapped her arms around his waist, and rested her cheek between his shoulder blades. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For seeing me. Not the single mom, not the waitress, not the girl from the wrong side of town. Just me." He turned off the water, dried his hands, and turned to face her. "You were always enough. You just didn't know it yet," she smiled. "I know it now." And in that ordinary kitchen, with dish soap on his hands and her hair smelling like lavender shampoo, he kissed her. Not like a CEO, not like a man who owned buildings or headlines, but like someone who'd finally come home. Outside, the world kept spinning. People still judged, still gossiped, still chased shiny illusions of perfect love. But inside that little house, love wasn't perfect. It was better. It was real. And that was more than enough.